Show. Today is Saturday, January 27th, 2018. We are in Season 3, Episode 4. Our show can be found around the web at wolfman.com, barefootbushcraft.com, aroundthecabin.com, Freedomizer Radio, Canadian Preppers Network, Prepper Survival Homestead, American Prepper Network, survivalcentral.net, iTunes, and many other fine websites. I'm your host, the Wolfman, and I'm joined today by my lovely co-host, Tori.
Hi.
In today's episode, we are going to talk about a man who died of exposure in Larapinta, Australia. And we are going to talk about rescuing your dog if they become injured. And we are going to speak to our special guest adventurer and co-winner of Season 4 of Alone, Jim Baird. So it has been a fun week here in the Niagara area. Temperatures have started to raise up a little bit. It's getting a little bit warm. There is no snow whatsoever out there. It has gotten as high today as 8 degrees, which has been kind of cool if you don't like the winter. Kind of awesome that way. So we're really fortunate. We have listeners from around the world listening to our show. So we're going to start with our first segment.
Listen up, it's time for mail call.
And we have a message here sent to us by Facebook from Carrie Jane Voth. She says, really enjoyed the episode, speaking about to Zoya, so that was our previous episode. I'm just a novice kicksledder, but love everything to do with urban mushing, especially my service dog, Dax. Zoya was really able to give us a great idea of what life is like for a full-time musher in Alaska. Great interview. I shared this link with all my mushing groups. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for writing us, Carrie Jane. That was pretty awesome. Again, we always love hearing from you. You can call us at 866-248-1362. The show's extension is 300. You can send us a message on Facebook. You can send us a message on Instagram. And, of course, you can email me directly, wolf@barefootbushcraft.com. So it's always great to hear from you. We always like hearing positive and negative. All of the stuff that you guys are doing out there. It's great to hear that mushers are listening to the show. It's always a lot of fun. All right, so we're going to get on to our next section, which is...
In the news.
A California man has died after hiking in Australia's sweltering outback. He was hiking through the Larapinta Trail, renowned for its ancient Aboriginal sacred sites, police said. The 33-year-old Californian had been walking the popular trail, which is 160 kilometers or 100 miles for you Yankees, west of Alice Springs in central Australia with another man when they became separated. The partner made it back to the Red Bank Gorge car park and raised the alarm. Unfortunately, the man didn't arrive and his body was eventually located about 400 meters down the track where he'd turned the wrong way. Police do not believe his death to be suspicious, although heat and exposure were likely contributing factors. A snake bite or a fall were other possible causes under investigation. Temperatures in the area can reach 42 degrees Celsius or 108 degrees Fahrenheit. The trail website lists overexertion as one of the greatest risks to hikers due to the potential for dehydration. The men had hiked 16 kilometers or 10 miles before they were separated on a path that afforded little shade and were carrying limited supplies of water, according to the police. We live in a beautiful but harsh environment, said police.
Wow, horribly unfortunate thing for someone to have happen out there. So this was January 11th, 2018, so it was a fairly recent event. And it's always very sad when we hear of people succumbing to exposure out there. Now, this person was, they said that he was from California, so he's used to the heat. But unfortunately, most likely, my first thing by thinking of this is this individual was ill-equipped for this journey, right? And we see that all the time. Even here in Canada, it does sometimes get up to 40 degrees. We do see these kind of problems where individuals, they overstrain themselves, they hike too hard, they don't have the proper equipment and or sunshade. Maybe this person, it didn't say in the article, but maybe this person had a t-shirt on, maybe the person didn't have a hat on, maybe they only had a liter or two of water. Who knows? So this goes back to this death was 100% preventable if it was truly just exposure and or snake bite. It doesn't say snake bite in the article, but it said that wasn't ruled out. So it's just one of those things. When you go for a hike, if you're from halfway around the world, you need to be properly prepared. So you need to understand the territory you're going into. Not everywhere around the world is the same. Of course, hiking in Canada is not the same as hiking in Australia, is not the same as hiking in Zambia. Everywhere you go, things are different, all the time. So make sure that when you go to participate in a hike like this, you do some research. The internet is there for that. It's not like the old days where you have to go to a library and check out a book on the Australian outback. You hit the internet, you watch the YouTube videos, you understand what you need. A pack that is going to suit your needs. You should understand that you need one that's not going to dig in, it's not going to cut, it's not going to hurt. Wear it around. Put some books or whatever in that backpack, so that way you can wear it around and understand how it's going to feel under load. Understand your water requirements, right? The general rule of thumb in your common day-to-day things is 2 liters of water per day. In this environment, I would probably almost double that. 46 degrees, huffing a 40-50 pound pack, yeah, you're going to be sweating out there, right? You make sure that you have all the supplies you need. You have the food, you have the water. Plus, if you'd only hiked 16 kilometers and there's only 2 of you, how did 2 people get separated? The article doesn't talk about what exactly happened. Like, why did they get separated? What happened? Why would you, in a foreign country, halfway around the world, in an environment you're not familiar with, why would you possibly separate from your partner? So this is totally, in my opinion, anyways, and of course, everyone has an opinion, that I believe it's totally preventable. I believe with some preparation, it certainly could have been prevented. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Oh, yeah, totally. 100%. They obviously, Australian temperatures and heat are probably different than California, where it's more desert-like conditions in Australia in certain areas, which sounds like this could be in this area that they should take into consideration. It's a different kind of heat, different kind of sweat. Need more water.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you even see that, like, living in Canada, water is never a problem for us. Back in 2009, I hiked the Bruce Trail. It was 800 and some odd kilometers, and water was never a problem. There's always everything from ditches filled with water that you could, if the water is clear and everything else, you can withdraw the water from that and filter it. There's always lakes, there's always streams, there's always waterfalls. And in a few areas of the Bruce Trail, there's lots of houses where you can just knock on a door and use a hose. That area, like Canada, is a very, very abundant area for water, and it's always, it's never that terribly warm out compared to other areas. So it's certainly a tragedy when someone dies or succumbs. I'm sure it wasn't. It's not like when you freeze to death, you simply get cold and you pass out. This person must have very much suffered in this heat for as long as he did. It's a very, very unfortunate thing that happened. Now, the other thing, and of course I can't speak to Australia because I don't know the laws, there are things that you can carry with you, at least in North America anyways, that can help prevent these tragedies. If you go hiking on a long trip like this, get yourself a marine flare gun. So it looks like a little teeny tiny handheld shotgun, usually like a Derringer or something like that. They take a 12 gauge cartridge. They're made out of plastic, and the cartridge has a flare in it. So if you were to get in this situation where you're lost and you're in a position where you're dying, you take the flare gun, you hold it over your head, you cock it back, you squeeze the trigger, and up goes a big, huge orb that flies up into the air. So if someone's looking for you, you can let them know where you are. If you have aircraft going overhead, you send 3 of these flares up, and that aircraft will come and investigate, so they know something's going on. If you're out there long enough that search and rescue is looking for you, again, You can use a flare gun. The other thing, on all of your outdoor gear, your backpacks, maybe even your outside jackets. Obviously, this person wasn't wearing a jacket at 42 degrees Celsius, I would hope. But on his backpack, put a whistle on it. If you get lost or separated from your group, you can only yell for so long. Obviously, you don't have enough water, so yelling is going to be a problem. Use a whistle. Just a couple of blows on your whistle. You know, there's a very famous brand of Canadian whistle called the Fox 40 whistle. I would recommend those to absolutely everyone. Buy these things. You can get them off eBay. Even if you get the old-fashioned pea whistle, get it, put it on your equipment, and you keep it on there. You can even get little clasp buckles, the lobster clasps now, that have a little tiny survival whistle built into them. It's not much, but it's better than nothing. So it's super, super important that you're prepared to go into a foreign country. You have to understand what you're getting into, right? Again, there's not much danger here in Canada from exposure, the same as there would be in other areas of the world. So you need to be prepared. You need to be careful. Like I said, things like maybe in Australia, they don't need the bear bangers that we have here, right? You go out into the Canadian wilderness, you need to have this little thing. It looks like a snap gun, and it has a little charge in it that makes noise to scare bears away, right? There's also bear bells, which are, a bit of controversy about those, but there's something else that people in bear country will carry. You know, they put their pots and pans on the outside of their backpack to jingle and stuff like that.
Well, they might need bear bells or something to keep the kangaroos away.
Kangaroos away, that's right. That's right. Or the opposite, let them know they're coming, I suppose. But, so be careful when you're out there. Please don't be one of the people that we end up talking about on our show. Again, nature is not kind. Nature is not easy on you, and nature will kill you very quickly and not care. So again, our condolences to the family of these individuals who did die, and it's terribly unfortunate that this death was preventable if the guy had just had the right pack. Another thing that you can get into, and again, this is a bushcraft show, is learn your survival skills. What is it about the situation that maybe even though he didn't have water, maybe he could have been in a spot where with a ferrocerium rod, or a fire striker, or a lighter, he could have started a fire. You start a fire in that environment that's controlled, and you put a bunch of brush and stuff on it and scrub that you find around, creates smoke. The smoke billows up, someone's going to see it. Someone's going to be like, hey, there's something going on over there. Again, it could have been something else that could have helped this individual get located, creating a huge ruckus, fire, noise, assuming, of course, that, the water was the issue. So, yes, it's a terribly horrible thing. Anyways, we're going to move on to our next section.
Tips and tricks.
And in tips and tricks today, we're going to talk about a really cool product. Again, thinking of rescue out in the wilderness. A product called the Pack-A-Paw Rescue Harness by a company known as Mountain Dogwear. So this harness is designed to be small, light, and packed up and allow you to help your dog. A little bit of history on this product. The owner or the creator of this product was read about a gentleman who was out with his dog, mountaineering with the dog, and the dog broke his leg, and he had to leave his dog on the side of the mountain to die. That is a very horrible thing. I could not imagine leaving your otherwise healthy and very beloved pet on the side of the mountain to die because of a broken limb. So this gentleman, over the next few years, he created something that could very well save your dog's life. It is called the Pack-A-Paw Rescue Harness. Basically, what it is it was designed in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. It's made from exceptionally strong and lightweight material, like nylon webbing and things like that. It's a harness backpack that you wear that has a pouch in the front for a large dog. That way you have your hands free. The straps can go around the dog and allow you to lift them up in and out of a vehicle and help you get your dog to safety. So if you can sort of imagine what this device looks like, it looks kind of like a backpack, but it's got a big, huge pouch on the front. Now, the upside is it packs down, and it folds up into a nice little pouch that you can put, in your backpack or whatever. It's a great life-saving device. Now, the unfortunate part is it's $129 American, so it's not an inexpensive tool. However, this tool could save your dog's life. So I don't know, how do you feel about a product like this, especially being as you're fairly slight?
I would do anything and spend anything to save the life of my pet. I just couldn't imagine leaving them to die alone. That's just unacceptable to me.
Yeah, absolutely. That to me as well, and many, many people, that is unacceptable losses. So basically how this harness works is, like I said, you unfold the harness, and it has like little metal loops and stuff. You put the dog's legs through the smaller holes of it, and it wraps around kind of like a blanket or like a dog jacket that goes on your dog. You then squat down, you clip the dog on, and you stand back up, and now your dog's your dog's legs are going to be kind of dangling a little bit, and you can stand right up. Right? It's a universal kit. It's designed to fit most dogs. Of course, some dogs, of course, will be different than others. Right? If you have a Great Dane, for example, I'm sure having a Great Dane will be a bit more of a challenge, especially, again, if it's someone who's fairly small, around 100 pounds or whatever. Picking up a Great Dane, it's not gonna work, right? But for, if you have a Husky or something, or small dogs, Jack Russells, I'm sure this would be a phenomenal system. And again, it's $129, definitely worth it to get it. You can go onto their website. It is mountaindogwear.com, and you can see photos of people huffing their dogs around in this. And again, if you decide to go with this product and you think that this is a good investment for you and your beloved pets out in the woods, make sure you try it, right? And this happens a lot. One of the worst things you could ever possibly do is buy a product or any product that is a life-saving device and not try it out, with the exception of the AED. Obviously, you don't want to try the electric paddles out before you use the device. That one you just hope works. But when it comes to like general hiking equipment, buy it, pull it out of its container, try it out on your dog, clip it on, and walk around. Take your dog out for a walk, but put the dog on this backpack thing. Put him on the Mountain Dogwear kit, right? The Pack-A-Paw. Something you would definitely want to do. That way you can understand how it's going to feel, how it's going to move, understand how your dog is going to act and react, right? If your dog freaks out and panics, that's going to be a huge detriment to you thinking, okay, now my dog's in. If my dog were to get injured and I need to pack him out, he's going to freak out. So you need to be prepared for that. Of course, the product is proudly made in the United States of America, which may or may not be a selling point for some people. But yeah, definitely a great tool to have. If you're out there with your dogs. Basically, what this is, a rescue sling, a rescue harness for your dog. It's classed as an emergency dog carrying harness. So I don't know. Do you have anything to add to that, Tori, about that?
No, I just think it's definitely try out new stuff before you set out on your hike, camping trip, whatever. But any amount that I would pay to save my dog's life is the right amount.
Yeah, I mean, you always consider if you had to leave your dog on a mountain, how much turmoil is that going to put you through as an individual? What, save $100? Come on, it's not that terribly much for life-saving equipment. You'd probably spend more than that on dog food. So if you take your dog out into the woods, this is a really, really fantastic tool, something you would want to get. And again, what if your dog comes down with some kind of exposure, like the gentleman that we just talked about? You're on, you take your dog and you travel to a foreign land, and the dog gets overheated. You can do the same thing. You can pick your dog up, you can bring him out, This thing gives you the ability to have both hands free, right? Because it's like an X harness. So you can put your backpack on your back and your doggy on your front, use your hiking poles, and you can huff it out of there, right? This way you're not relying on, t-shirts and poles and stuff like that to try and create some kind of a slip harness. The problem is with the slip harnesses, your dog could the dog could fall out, and the other thing, if the dog is, depending on the stability of your dog could try to take off on you. So you always have to watch that. We do a lot of that in dog and pet first aid courses that we teach. Barefoot Bushcraft offers a pet first aid course. And so that's something, to consider taking as well, to be a companion with this product. So with that, I want to thank you very much for listening to us this great Saturday. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we are going to speak to a really amazing Canadian adventurer him and his brother went all the way to win Season 4 of Alone, which is a television created by the History Channel, and they fly guys out. One of the seasons was in Patagonia. Most of the years it's filmed in British Columbia. It's a really great show. If you have the opportunity to watch it, go ahead and do so. I had the opportunity to be involved with Season 1 of Alone. It was a fun opportunity to be involved with the TV show. So with that, again, quick break. When we return, you're going to speak. You're going to hear Jim Baird. He's an amazing guy. He's got a great website you can check out. If you happen to be in the Toronto area, you can see him talk at the 2018 Toronto Outdoor Adventure Show. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Robert Suter from Survival Central Limited. Check out our two great prepper survival websites. For the beginner, survivalcentral.ca, and for the advanced, more extreme prepper, prepperextreme.com. Be prepared, stay safe, and survive.
And welcome back to this half of the Barefoot Bushcraft Radio Show. And my special guest this week is Jim Baird. As many of you, our listeners, know, he was the person who won Season 4 of Alone with his brother. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to have you on the show. So if you could start by telling us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your background and who you are as a person.
Absolutely. Well, I'm Jim Baird. Adventurer is my handle. You can see my Facebook page, Jim Baird Adventure, at JB Adventurer. And that's what I do. I mean, I go on trips in the Canadian North, in the Arctic. Most of them are self-propelled. I'm a whitewater canoeist. I love doing canoe trips that cross watersheds, and also just winter camping and winter treks as well. And that's kind of I guess something that started at a young age. My dad and my grandfather built a cottage in the 60s before I was born in Crown Land. It remained water access, and I ended up spending large amounts of my time there and living up there as well, and for a good portion of the year. And that's kind of where I learned all this kind of stuff and had a love for nature and the outdoors, and that sort of just spawned into when I got old enough that I realized, maybe this Crown Land area here in Southern Ontario isn't as big as I thought, and I really got that kind of wanderlust, if you want to call it, there to explore some of the more natural beauty and serious remote wilderness areas that we have in this country, and it just sort of snowballed from there.
That's awesome. It truly is kind of a cool way to spend your life. And unfortunately, as I'm sure you're aware, so many people these days, we sort of lose out on that ability to go into nature. And I think that's why things like your YouTube channel are so important to people to learn those skills. So I know now you have a YouTube channel, right? If you want to could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, my YouTube channel is Jim Baird Adventure, and what I do basically, it's like what you said, so many people miss out on that, and I just had such a problem accepting that I was going to have a normal job in this world. I was just like, no! And, I did things like prospecting and things that got me outdoors and that sort of stuff too. But I really wanted to be doing this. And, unfortunately, this day and age, it's not really a booming business, paddling furs across the country like it used to be. So, I actually found a love of photography and videography through doing this, and found that I could work at content and sort of make that my sort of way that would allow me to go out there and do this as my job. And so you can see a lot of it on my YouTube channel. It was first I did some video work with Field and Stream magazine, and that's where it started, because most people will put on their email they'll put writer or author or photographer. I just put adventurer, so so Field and Stream started calling me the adventurer, and I kind of just took it from there. And that's what I do. I film my trips. I bring a camera. It's a lot of work. You got figure out batteries, you got to try to get all these shots, and now technology's been good, and now there's drones, but it adds a lot more to it. And I basically just cover in a very honest way what I do out there, for better or worse. I don't shy away from showing myself blowing it and dumping and washing down a rapid and this kind of thing. And I edit that together. I put it on YouTube, and I share it on my social accounts, and I share it with magazines, and I do written and photography stuff as well.
That's really cool. So that's where you got like your baseline of growing up in the woods, and then the videography. Now, people, for some reason, even though bushcraft and stuff is all about outdoors, everybody loves the technical aspect of what we do. So how do you do your videos? Like equipment that you use? What do you use to mix your videos? Mm-hmm. Software, things like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just do some like basic editing stuff with, iMovie, or I was using Final Cut Pro before they changed it, and Adobe Premiere. I also work with editors that really, and I share my vision, my story of how I want it to be. People that really know exactly all the bells and the whistles, and how to navigate this really top level software for some of the videos I do for the larger magazines. And that way it kind of takes off the learning curve, but it makes it more challenging because I have to pay a professional editor to do this stuff, which isn't cheap. So a lot of the stuff I do work with other editors on, and I use a Canon. I think it's called an XA30, a shotgun mic. I try to use lav mics when I can. I'm trying to use professional action cams. I'm using a Garmin Verb and a GoPro Hero Black right now. And I have a DJI Mavic Pro, which does some auto follow stuff. It's a really compactable drone. And then I have a couple custom-made lithium batteries and a really big solar panel that I use to kind of charge stuff when I'm out there. And that's always a challenge when you're out there for 2 weeks, a month even. You can bring so many extra batteries, but you're always worried about running out of batteries, and it's very hard to capture. Like you saw on the show Alone, Ted and I just left the cameras running, and we managed to catch a duck walking through camp and me pouncing on it. Well, that's never the kind of thing you're going to be able to capture if you're not able to just leave the cameras rolling and not worry about batteries. So, that's always a challenge, and something that technology is sort of helping out on.
For sure. I know, some of the stuff that I did back in the day, I talked to somebody who ended up being very famous in the outdoor industry, and they said, here's, if you want to work and you want to go towards discovery, here's the cameras, and, and that stuff, like you say, that equipment's, although you can get consumer grade, you can get the lav mics and all that, it's expensive, and getting those shots, working outdoors, I found personally is one of the challenging environments because there's so many variables. Unlike a studio filming like Star Trek or whatever, they have control of every single aspect. Yeah. Outdoor filming
and
is
also
hard.
It's like, imagine you're on a tough canoe trip too, right? And it's freaking tough enough. You're paddling, you're portaging, you're getting hammered by blackflies, you're getting rained on, you're behind schedule, you're hungry, you're running a Class 3 rapid, you got to worry about not dying, and now you got to try to film it all. Right? A lot of people that went on Alone said, one of the hardest parts with going on Alone was filming it. But for me and my brother, it was like, this is way easier than filming our trips when we're trying to travel from point A to point B. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. I can remember once doing a canoe trip where I had the tripod over the canoe and I had it ratchet strapped and tied with paracord to film the canoe shot. And then I'm sure it's the same for you. You do an hour of prep work for 12 seconds of usable footage, right?
Yeah, it does happen, especially with the drone sometimes, right? But, it kind of becomes part of the story too, right? So, if you don't kind of share the fact that you have to carry this equipment, and it becomes less honest, because that whole filming aspect kind of becomes really part of what you're doing. And if you're giving an honest documentary out there, you kind of have to include that, because it does change it, and that's one of the things, like, for me now, it's like when I go out there, I'm still working. So unless you really have a love of, content creation and everything on the back end, there's all kinds of ways you could probably go about making your career in the outdoors. This is kind of the business that I've kind of fallen into. But when you're going out there and you have to capture, this many logo shots, and you have to take pictures in specific areas for a specific number of sponsors, and you have to deliver a video series, it definitely adds an element of stress when you're out there, than when you're doing it on, the 2 weeks of vacation you have a year, and you don't have to worry about all that other stuff. You know what I mean? So that's one thing that kind of, that I do enjoy, and it's rewarding, but it definitely takes away from some of the relaxing feeling of enjoying the wilderness. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So you went from, like you said, professional adventurer, and then the audition came up for Alone. Can you tell us a little bit about that process? So you obviously had to audition, all that sort of stuff. So what was the auditioning, the prep process like for the show?
Well, basically, one of my followers is like, Jim, Alone, you got to check this out. And I thought, well, that sounds pretty cool. But at this point, they were changing it up, and they were starting to go with 2 people, and they don't really want to spill all the beans on what they're planning on doing, the producers of the show yet. So I ended up I actually ended up showing them something that I already had put together, kind of like a sizzle reel of me and my brother. And they really loved it. But then, and I thought, well, this sounds cool, but I didn't really want to sign anything that wasn't, exactly, wasn't really specific. And I don't know, I didn't want to be kind of held down, and you know what I mean? And so I ended up doing this trip across the Ngaba Peninsula. And I came back from that, and the people from Alone called, and they said, okay, Jim, we want you on the show. You got to do it. I'm like, no, I was just alone for 36 days, freezing my butt off in the Arctic, caught in blizzard after blizzard. I don't think I want to go do this again, and they're like, are you serious? Come on, this is such a big opportunity, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't know. I'll just call me if you don't find anyone else in a couple months, and maybe I'll do it then. And they're just like, what the hell's the matter with this guy? And my brother's going to me, he's like, come on, Jim, we got to do this. My brother really wanted to do it. He said, I've done a lot of your crazy trips besides you that you talked me into. So, this time I want to talk you into it. And he's like, I'm not going to say we're going to win, man, but I think we have a pretty damn good chance. And I said, I agreed, but I didn't really know how well my skills were going to convert into survival or bushcraft. You know what I mean? Because I'm going on my trips, Wolf, and I'm not, napping arrowheads and knives. I'm not making bow drill fires out there. You know what I'm saying? I'm not doing these primitive, I'm not making, spring snare traps. I mean, I've researched it. I kind of have an idea of how to do it. I find it fascinating. But I'm bringing like a shotgun and modern fishing equipment. I throw a lighter in every one of my bags sometimes too. You know what I mean? But in the end, it was just that ability to be out there in real situations where you can't just go home and deal with what some people might consider misery, and still be kind of having fun. And so I guess really that whole camping and expedition travel aspect really kind of, those skills really transferred into a purely kind of survival situation,
Hi, this is Tori. I'm Wolf's co-host. I was just wondering what stuff that you were filming did they kind of leave out in the editing for the show?
Well, I mean, there's a few things, like, for example, when Ted made this boat, you saw, we just had these perfect paddles. Some people were like, oh, they let them bring paddles. No, I actually whittled those. I whittled those out of like a 7-foot thick log, by betoning them. I actually just recently did a video on that should be out at Field and Stream's Facebook page in the coming weeks, but just how to make a paddle using, your knife, and a saw. So I made those good. So that I kind of wish that got in. And then also they have to, it's not so much that they leave things out, but there's so much. I mean, how do you share me and Ted rolling, for 2 people, and then not to mention everybody else rolling for 75 days? How do you share all of that, right? So they kind of have to sort of condense things, and I think they did a really good job of, there's some things they could show and some things they didn't. And so obviously they want to make it, when you watch the show, they don't want to make it obvious who is doing the best or who's going to win. So, they'll decide to show maybe some of me and Ted. Every day you have to say what positive things you're feeling, what negative things you're feeling. You know what I mean? What's going through your head on the good parts, the bad parts, and everything. And so, maybe one episode they'll show me and Ted doing really well, and everyone's like, "Oh, the Baird brothers are going to win." And then the next episode they'll decide to show us having some more of our defeats, and they'll show the other guys doing better. And it's not that can be an honest thing too, but they don't want to make it so obvious necessarily who's going to win. They want to keep people guessing, and they want to show a little bit of everything. So, I wish they showed more, but we can't make a 20 episode series here. So I don't know if that gives you kind of a good example of sort of what how that kind of transpired there a little bit, but.
Oh, that's great! Thank you. So what was it like when you found out that you won, when I believe it was a fiance and a girlfriend that came up behind you?
Yeah, well, my brother and his fiance, they've been together for ages. They own a house together, and they're, she's been a part of our family for a very long time. And of course, Tori, who I'm married to now, I've been with her for a few years, and we miss them a lot out there, and you really start to realize some things you take for granted in life when you're out there, and when you get into those days after day 50 or something, it starts to be, you start to be kind of contained and in the same routine and contained by your energy levels, and it gets very wearing. And so it was an absolutely amazing, almost surreal feeling to be reunited with them and find out that we'd won the show. That's really cool. Now, you mentioned, of course, now as an adventurer, Tori and I ourselves do lots of everything, hiking, backpacking, canoeing and stuff. Every aspect of a trip, I'm sure the same with you, is planned, right? Sure, there's the stuff, like you say, when you misread rapids, whatever. But for the most part, you're like, okay, I'm going for 10 days, I need, or 20 days, I need this much equipment. I need, backpacks, food, all that stuff. Now, as a rule, everybody on the TV show alone, almost everyone suffers in the aspect and area of food, right? You don't have the freeze-dried stuff that we normally use, where you just scoop the water up and boil it up, and that's that. So what was that struggle like to feed 2 people for all that time, even though you were comfortable being in that environment? Yeah, that's part of the difficulty of it. And, it's one of those things, when you look at what the native people of the area were traditionally doing at that time of year, they were inside their plank houses feasting, because they benefited off of the salmon runs. They've been fishing all summer, hunting all summer. There would have been a big fall salmon run that they'd gotten together a community and harvested these fish and dried them out. We were really put into a time of year where, it's a good outdoorsman. Being a good outdoorsman is knowing how to never find yourself in a position like an alone. Okay, now, stuff happens though, right? You're shipwrecked or something like that. It can happen, right? That no matter how skilled you are, Mother Nature slams the door on people sometimes. And I think that was one of the very challenging things, to realize just how much food you actually need. And one of the things we really take for granted is how long it takes to procure that food. People say, oh, why didn't you just bring a hammock made of parachute cord and take it all apart and build a 400-meter long, a fish net? And it's just like, well, when you have to spend 8 hours a day trying to fish and forage and turning over boulders to try to find wood, not to mention to try to find food, then cutting your wood, then cooking it and eating it, it's 8 hours has gone by and you're freaking exhausted, and you have a couple hours to try to do these other projects which will further where you are. You know what I mean? And I think that's something people don't really realize, is it's not like at home where you could just go into the garage and bang off a project and order a pizza halfway through. No, you have to imagine trying to go out while you're, building a canoe, let's say, or you're doing a project in your garage, and you'd have to go into your backyard and start eating grass and bugs and walking around the neighborhood trying to find as much food from the land as you could get from ordering a pizza. It would take all week, right? So, I mean, that's a very challenging thing, and that definitely puts a wear on your, on your energy levels, right? And then things become, a lot of people freak out when they miss lunch, you know what I mean? And the other thing you don't realize is me and Ted were eating a fair amount of food, but there's something called rabbit starvation. So it would happen to trappers. It even happens to kind of lynx almost in a way on years where there's a lot of hares, like lynx, like wildcats, because you eat all this food, but there's no fat in it, and your body can't sustain, won't digest protein without fat, okay, or without carbs. And so we're eating limpets and these chitin gum boots, they're also called, and there's hardly any fat in any of this stuff. So it's like it doesn't matter how much we eat. Our body's not really sucking out the nourishment out of this food. It's very challenging. It makes you feel not really happy all the time, we'll say.
Wow, that's pretty wild. It really, really is that it takes that effect on you. Like you said, most of the time you plan to go out into the woods, and you were in, like you said, a true survival situation. There was a TV show once, and I apologize, the name eludes me, where they did that. These two gentlemen, we had them on the show a couple of years ago, where they canoed out into the wilderness, and then they set all their gear on fire to say, okay, now what? And it was, they had to build boats and stuff. Very, very, very similar to what happened to you guys on Alone. So now most people,
and then we at least had a safety net with our where we could tap out, and in an emergency, someone could come get us, right? So that's going to be less mentally terrifying than actually, we're simulating it, but we do have kind of a closer safety net. If you didn't have any way to contact anyone and you're really far away from anybody, that adds an extra dose of fear on top of what we were already doing, right?
Yeah, for sure. Now, I remember, and most adventurers go through this, when you spend long stretches in the wilderness, whether it be backpacking trips, canoe trips, whatever, you have, there's a process of reintegration into society, right? Where you come home and you're like, now I've gone from owning nothing to all my stuff again. And that sort of thing, learning to use, drive and talk to your friends and all that sort of stuff. So what was that process like for you guys, the reintegration into society after such a time?
Yeah, I've done, I did 36 days alone crossing the Angava Peninsula. I've done canoe trips alone, 19 days or more on tough canoe trips. And I didn't find it so hard being alone out there, but I felt it was weird when I finally talked to people. Like, when you're by yourself, nothing's funny. That's one of the things that you're not laughing at anything. Now, Ted and I got so exhausted, it was too hard to laugh by the end of it. Too much energy. And then when you get back into society, you're talking a lot, everything's funny, and it feels kind of weird. Because Ted and I were together, I don't know so much if we had that so much of a weirdness, but there definitely was, I felt really, obviously because we won and we got a good chunk of coin and all that kind of stuff from winning this, survival game show thing that the show is, but we had to, so at first I was really relaxed, but I just think you become to really enjoy the simplicity and the rhythm of kind of living within the same rhythms of nature, and you start to really realize, well, all these kind of problems that you had back in society, they're not really such a big deal. First world problems, it really gets you down to the basics of what's really important is staying warm, making sure you don't get hurt, and finding enough food for the day and cutting firewood. You know what I mean? And that sort of makes you realize, geez, maybe all these things I've been worrying about don't matter so much. But then at the same time, you come back with that attitude, but then you're these things are kind of pushed on you that we have to sort of deal with in modern day society. And some of them, even though you should be less stressed out, they almost in a way become more stressful. I don't really know why. So, I mean, that sort of can be a little bit of the difficulty there coming back. But I think in me and Ted's case, because we have done month-long, 5-week-long, and more even trips, that maybe it wasn't as difficult as it might have been for some people.
For sure, because I remember the big thing when I came off the Bruce Trail after being out there for 4 months is how much time you have on your hands. Like, I'd come home and sit on my computer, and it's like, wow, you're not doing all the stuff that you normally would have to do.
Totally. You start to feel, it feels like there's nothing to do because you're so used to getting up, packing camp, breaking camp in the morning. It's like when I go on my canoe trips and and then I go on a regular kind of camping trip, like car camping, or people stay in the same site for 2 days. I'm like, I feel like there's nothing to do. Like, I feel kind of like I'm getting bored. I want to go exploring. I want to be doing something, right?
For sure.
And so that was a challenge of being out there. By the time you got to the end of Alone, it was sort of like the same campsite, and you don't have the means, food that you have in hand, or food that you can go and get easily. It's kind of like having money in the bank. You can't really do anything fun in society except for just the bare minimum if you don't have any money. So when you're running out of food and you're hungry, you can't expend energy to go exploring over here or go fishing over there or do anything else to better your position or do anything physical to mentally make you feel better. You know what I mean? So it becomes kind of boring and constricting just due to your own energy levels by the time you get really deep into it.
Yeah, I totally understand that.
I just have a weird question. What was the first thing that you and Ted ate when you, after, surviving on fish and things like that?
That's not a weird question because everyone asks that. Actually, we couldn't really just eat anything. When we got out, they had a nutritionist come and talk to us. They told us if we drank more than a certain amount, if we ate carbs, all of a sudden it could have all sorts of horrible problems. It could cause all kinds of horrible problems. I kind of stuck to that a bit, but then, about 3 weeks in, I was like, I took my girlfriend Tori at the time to Jamaica. We freaking went to the buffets. I ate everything I could. I was ordering pizzas. I was like, oh God, like how can you not, right? And so as soon as I could stomach that, if I got out, if I ate 2 slices of pizza, I probably would have barfed when I got out because you're like malnourished. You know what I mean? And then actually, so I started eating all this stuff, and I actually had problems. I had what's called iritis, which is like arthritis of your eyes, were swollen, which is like an autoimmune problem from my body being in a state of shock from going to this, very lean protein diet to eating all kinds of other things and sugars and, carbs. And, it was like, my body was like, what the hell is going on here? And you gain weight at an alarmingly fast rate after something like that. So, basically what was happening to me is I was like ballooning in fatness, still weak, and had like skin rashes and a pounding headache and all these bizarre things. I had to go see specialists, and that kind of eventually wore off. But that's kind of, you hear about these things that happen to like prisoners of war and this kind of thing, but you don't realize how fast it actually happened. So that's not something I was really thinking was going to be an issue, but it turned out to really be one.
Wow, that's pretty wild. That's really, really crazy. Mm-hmm. That unexpected things that you wouldn't expect. So now you've gone.
Yeah, I had a pounding headache for 2 months.
Wow.
It was just for some weird thing going on in my body. It was. I felt like I was like horribly hungover for 2 months, and this didn't really kick in until a month and a half, let's say, after I got back. But that's completely what caused it, was that refeeding syndrome, I think they call it.
Huh. Now you like you say on your website and yourself, you consider yourself a Canadian adventurer. I've done lots of trips in Canada. You talk to guys like Les Stroud, same thing. So what drives you to explore Canada versus the Yucatan?
The Yucatan. Where's the Yucatan Peninsula again?
It's South America.
In South America.
I just mean what.
I don't know. That sounds pretty good. I think that the one of the main reasons is that we have such a abundance of wild spaces here, and we in Canada, though a lot of those wild spaces, sure, they're in the north. But there actually is a small section of the year, 2, 3, 4 months maybe, part of the year where they are like a paradise. When you have that perfect weather, you got some bugs, maybe a bit more than a few bugs, but you can actually go up there and do an expedition like this, where in some other wilderness areas, like say, this middle of the Sahara Desert, it's always going to be horrific. Like I don't know if I would want to be hanging out in the Northwest Territories for too long when it was minus 70 and pitch black for 4 months, right? I mean, I do go up to the Arctic in the winter and have, but not during those complete dark months in the same kind of way. So, I mean, I would probably want to be a Canadian adventurer even if I was from anywhere else in the world. It just so happens that I'm lucky enough to have it here and to have that going on here and closer in my backyard, so to speak.
I couldn't agree more. I know Canada, again, as most adventurers will say, one of the most beautiful places in the world to visit. And, some people have asked, they've asked me, well, is it cheaper to travel in Canada than it is traveling in Cuba? And I always say, yeah, try to get to Baffin Island and see how much that costs you. We had an adventure.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Like, we did a canoe trip in the Northwest Territories. We had to get, this past summer, we had to get picked up and dropped off by float plane. I think just a charter, which we could take 4 of us, but that first charter was just $5,000. And then the airfare to get to some of these remote northern communities is another arm and a leg. I think the trip ended up costing us over $5,000 each.
Wow.
To do, and we were on the river for 2 weeks. And then on either side, there's all this travel time because you can't just take a direct flight to the Yukon-Mackenzie divide. You know what I mean? So you got to go and spend a day in Yellowknife and get a hotel and then organize some of the gear that you shipped up there and buy some things, or, you got to arrange to buy something in Norman Wells because you can't bring, camping fuel on the plane. And then you fly to the little community. Then it's bad weather and your float plane charter might get delayed for a day. Then you head out there, right? And it's the same thing on the way back. So just the time of just travel and the expense of just travel is a lot. I think a jug of Tide in Kugluktuk was $50 last time I was there, just Tide detergent.
And that's not even the kind that the guys eat, right?
No, that's just that's like washing, like to wash your clothes, it was like $15 for a liter of chocolate milk, or maybe it was 2 liters of chocolate milk. But yeah, there's a little bit of gouging, but also just the price to get things up there is expensive because it's such a remote location.
Yeah, wow, that's wild. So we're sort of coming to the end of our time, a little tiny bit here. So what's next? So obviously you were the champions for alone. You came out on top. You got I'm sure the money that you have helps fund your adventures. So now with this, so what's next for you career-wise?
Well, I've basically, I'm just buying a place up north. And that's just adjacent to a big Crown land area. So, I mean, right now I live in a pretty cool spot, but it's getting developed here, and so I want to kind of live where I have some kind of bush in my backyard. So that's what I did with that, and then I'm still pushing on to do big things. I've come out with a line of hats. I'm hopefully going to develop that into an apparel line. Jim Baird Adventure brand. It's the hats have my logo, which is a really cool kind of Canadian wilderness depiction on it, and I'm giving 10% of proceeds of those hats to Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society. I'm going to be going up to Baffin Island, and we'll see. I'm still working towards get my own show where, me and my brother, we head out there and we film some crazy, whitewater adventure in the Arctic. So, I mean, these are things that I'm continuing to work towards. I suppose I could have just taken that money and really slowed down and lived off the interest and been frugal, but I've kind of even ramped up more so with all the things that I'm doing. So that's the plan.
That's awesome, and I have seen your hats. Out of all of them, I'm a camouflage lover. I like the camo version, and for our listeners who maybe haven't seen them, it's like the camouflage hat, and it's like a canoeer guy, and it has your name on it. Very nice, very good product.
Yeah, it's the adventure. It says on the logo, and yeah, there's a guy running rapids in a birch bark canoe amidst the mountains. So it sort of embodies the spirit of adventure.
That's very, very cool. Now, people, of course, our listeners sometimes might have questions like, how do you become an adventurer, things like that. So if someone wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Well, you can reach out to me on my Facebook page, which is, at JB Adventure or Jim Baird Adventurer. And also through my website, which is theadventurer.ca. And there'll be, an email there. You can put me an email, or you can, message me on Facebook or something like that. And I usually always respond to everybody. I had a huge influx of emails from after the lone win. People just congratulating me, which is awesome, and made a lot more good contacts through doing that. And I'd be happy to answer anybody else's questions if they want to reach out to me directly.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to thank you for being on the show, and I'm sure, we will probably see each other here and there around in the outdoor adventure circuit.
I hope so.
We would love to hear from you. If you have any comments or suggestions or anything you'd like to say about the show or on the show, please get in touch with us. You can call us. Leave a voicemail at 866-248-1362, extension 300. Tweet us at BF Bushcraft. Send us a message on our Barefoot Bushcraft Facebook page. Or, of course, you can even send us a picture on Instagram. And we are, of course, Barefoot Bushcraft. So please, we'd always love to hear from our listeners. Get in touch with us any way you can, and we will play your information on the air. Thank you.